We'd like to welcome you today to the Finding the Living Among the Dead, How to Find Your Living Cousins Online. Just a little bit about me. My name is Amy Archibald, and a lot of people say I look very young to be up here. I started doing family history when I was 13 years old, and I've been doing it for 30 years and teaching others for 20. And I invite you to make sure that you look at the syllabus for the presentation today. I'll be telling you a little bit more about sections in there that are good resources. So make sure that you check that out. So we're going to talk about what we can find in Family Search Family Tree that can help us in finding living people. So the very first question I asked before is, who am I looking for? That's where we need to start. My particular person I'm looking for is this gentleman. He's my fourth great-grandfather, and I want to know who all of his living descendants are. There are some clues that are in the tree. Do you guys have an idea what they could be? Yes? Sources. Anything else? Memories. Yes? The submitters of the stuff. That's right. So in this particular case, we've got a bunch of memories, we have sources, there's a discussion, there's notes. We can look at the latest changes that are taking place. We can see if there's a war over some source or information going on. Now, this is my fourth great-grandfather. If I want to find all of the living descendants, I've got to look at all of the other people who are dead that are in the family tree to find out who is submitting information on all of those people. So his children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren that are deceased, they're still connected to this person, and I need to find out, I'm going to need to go through this for every single person if I want to have a giant reunion. Well, what my reason is for finding living people may not be yours. You may have a very small targeted area and you're looking for a very small group of people, where I'm looking for thousands of people. So who's making changes to the tree? So this very first, there was a couple event added, and it was added by Shelly Nye. And I can just click on her name, and if she has updated her contact setting in Family Search, I can see the way she wants people to contact her. So I could send her an email, or I could call her, or I could go on Facebook and look her up and see if she's on Facebook. I could even search to see if she uses that same email address on Facebook and connect to her on Facebook. But she's made a change to the tree, and she's told me who she is, because she's telling me when she's in the tree that she's wanting to collaborate with people by putting information in her contact information there. So if you go into your settings and you have not turned on any public way for people to contact you, it kind of communicates to others that you're not willing to collaborate. And that's probably not what your message is, but that can come off to people who are looking for you, that they may not know how to find you just from this information. So who's attaching specific sources? In this particular case, her husband's helping her attach on this common ancestor. And so I have his email address, the same mailing address, but I could contact him as well. And who is attaching, like you said, the memories to the tree? This lady's attaching it, and she's told us that she wants to be contacted by email only. And I can email her and ask her more information about this particular memory, or I could tell her, hey, I have this reunion going on, and I want you to come join my group and my Facebook group, and we're going to talk about what we're planning for the reunion. In the discussion section of the person's detail page, you can create any kind of discussion you want. Well, I posted that I am looking for all the living descendants. And I know that people have come to my Facebook group because of this post. They did not know about it any other way. No one told, no other family members told them about it. They saw it here in the tree. And they saw my notice that I am looking for them. So maybe there's people that are already looking for you. This is the group that I created in Facebook. So I just created this particular one for all the descendants of this person, and then I started going through my friends that I already had on Facebook that I already knew were descendants of this person, started adding them. And they started adding their family members. And at the time we did this, there was a little over 120 people connected. And I haven't really pushed this yet. I just wanted to see who would find me. There's also people who have just gone onto Facebook and typed in the search the name of our ancestor, Elisha Groves, and they have found the Facebook page. So how many in this room have created Facebook groups for families? Great, that's great. I have about a dozen of these. Some of them are this large, where I'm trying to find my fourth great grandfather and about 8 generations of people. And some of them are just my first cousins, and trying to get us all to communicate with each other here and share things that we're doing on a daily basis. So we keep in touch with each other this way. So who are the descendants in the family tree? To kind of give us an idea of how am I, in my situation, going to find all these living people? So you can click on the descendancy view in family tree. And you can look for 4 generations of the main person that you've selected. Well, I just told you there's at least 7 or 8 generations. And so I'm not going to be able to see them all, and I'm not going to be able to see them all in this particular view. So we want to look at a partner program with Family Search called Pazilla, and just look at what this particular family member generations look to the most living generation. So in the center is the common ancestor, my fourth great grandfather. This little tiny dot out to the side are my 2 children. There are 3 or 4, maybe even 5 missing generations in this tree because they're living, or they're deceased and there's family members not putting information in the tree. So what I'm looking at right now, except for the little piece that's my family, are all the deceased generations that are currently connected in family tree. So you can see there's some gaps that I've got to come to the most recent deceased generation before I can find the living people. So I'm going to just kind of grab a cousin. And I picked one that was over closer by me that came through a common 3rd great grandmother, not 4th great grandfather, just because I also have a large family organization that I do for that family member as well. And so I wanted to, if I could find this person, it would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because I could invite him to come to 2 reunions at the same time. So I wanted to leverage my work that way. So I chose this person. His name is Robert Lee Ivy, and he's not that far away looking in Pazilla from my family, but I don't really know who these people are, except that we share a common 3rd great grandmother. So I don't really know them very well, but I just grabbed it, and it shows that he died in the last couple of years, so it's a pretty recent death and person being added to the tree. So I've clicked on in Pazilla to view the person in the family tree, and we're going to do the same kind of thing as we looked at my 4th great grandfather, who's contributed items. He doesn't have any sources attached to him. There's not a lot of latest changes. No one's added any notes, but someone has attached 2 memories. One is obviously his photograph. So I know that there's at least something else besides the picture. So I click on the memory, and the person that attached the memory, they attached his obituary. That's gold if you're trying to find living people, particularly if you're trying to find someone who is most recently deceased, because more than likely those people that are listed in the obituary as living are still all living. Well, the person that submitted this information, I have no clue how to contact her. Until sometime later this year, they're hoping to be able to install in Family Search a way that we can communicate with each other just by our contact names. So like I talked about before, if you're going to participate in adding items to the family tree, you need to keep your information current and go in and put in however you want people to contact you. And I usually make it all public because I find people and all of my contact directory information is public anyway. So I think, I don't care if you get it from Family Search, you get it from Facebook, or you get it out of the phone directory. I don't care where you get it. Give them the easiest way to get to you. So we can find living people in obituaries. If you can get to the closest living or closest deceased person, you can find living people. So this particular obituary talks about that Robert is survived by his wife, Linda. Up earlier in the obituary, it tells me her maiden name. His children, Shane and Liz, and Shayla and Corey, and Tiffany and Brandon. And it gives me the daughters' married names and where they're living. And then he has some nicknames that he named his grandchildren. So, and he talks about, he had a nickname earlier. In the obituary, talks about his nickname was Bubblegum. And he nicknamed his grandchildren. So he has a grandchild named Sage, and that he called Sagebrush, and Mackenzie, and Colton, and Bronk. And it tells me, like, one of them had a nickname of Chicken. But I know a lot of personal information about this person. I also know that he had a great-grandchild, and his living brothers and sisters, and that he was preceded in death by his parents, and his sister, and his brother-in-law. What a gold mine the obituaries are, right? Well, besides relying on someone to attach an obituary to a memory in Family Search, we can find obituaries in other places. We can find them in search engines. We'll talk about some of them. On my syllabus, I have a list of search engines that you can use, more than just Google and Bing, to find obituaries. We can find obituaries in newspapers, and sometimes the newspapers we find them through search engines. On the syllabus, I also have a list of newspapers and obituary locations that you can find. Guess what? Mortuaries also have obituaries. And if you can't find it on a search engine, and you can't find a newspaper for the location you're looking, I did a search and typed in Duchesne, Utah mortuaries to see if there were mortuaries, and search for the person in the mortuary. And then there are record collections that are available that have obituaries. So we have been doing a lot of indexing of obituaries this last year, and we'll continue to do so. We're talking a little bit about Google search. So I searched, I just put Robert Lee Ivy in quotes and typed obit. I didn't even type the word obituary. And the first 5 listings that came up, the very first one is actually a reference to the local newspaper, which that's very helpful. The second is a reference to an ancestry, and it says that there's an obituary attached. And just looking at this little overview, I don't know if it's really his obituary or if it's an obituary attached to somebody else, but his name comes up in that search. But I could go to Ancestry and look. In the obituary we looked at before, it said his sister's name, and I can look in the family tree and see his sister. And in his sister's record and obituary, it also talks about him. And then Ancestry has some birth, marriage, and death results for his wife, who's alive. So she's not dead, but they have birth and marriage information. She's still living, and there's information because it's attached to his record, his actual death information, and it talks about her. And then there's a Utah obituary record at funerals.com that have information about him as well. So I decided just to also look and see if I could do a search for Duchesne newspapers. And I searched online and found his obituary in the newspaper. And he died in 2012, and I did the search in 2014. It's still online. It's still available for me to find. Picture matches the picture of him in Family Search, so I know it's the same person. And I read through the obituary. It's the identical same obituary. So that helped me test my hypothesis that I could find the same information if someone hadn't attached it to the tree. And then I decided to see, could I find the same information in an obituary listing from a mortuary? And so I searched for Duchesne County mortuaries and found Hollinger Mortuary, and I found the same photograph, and I find the same obituary. And in the background, this green, grassy stuff is actually a video clip of him riding horses. And I can watch that happen. So sometimes the mortuaries have very media-laden material that you can see that you can use for memories in family search or get information from the mortuary of who created that and submitted it there. Some of the record collections, Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, Family Search, any kind of repository has information that you can get obituary information in. So I just did a basic search. I typed Robert Lee Ivy, the birth year, death year, no locations, click search. The very first link I get is the Find a Grave Index. I would have seen this in Family Search. I would see it now if I went in Family Search. At the time, the index wasn't shared with Family Search. But I actually clicked on the Find a Grave Index and went to the Find a Grave memorial that's created. Same photograph, same obituary. So it was great for me to test that, to know that I could get the same kind of information by doing completely different search. And then there's a public member story. So someone that is a member of Ancestry has shared a public story about him, and it happens to be his obituary. Same obituary, all the same identical information. Ancestry has the index to the obituary times, the obituary daily times, and you can search that and look at the index for that. And then they also have the United States Obituary Index and collection. And he's listed in there, and that also gives me some of the information about his children and siblings and his parents without me actually seeing the full version of the obituary. I also wanted to see in Ancestry, did anyone have him in one of their trees? So I just stripped out my search and said, I just want to look at the trees only. And the first top 3 trees, the first 2 are actually by the same person. It's like they duplicated their tree. I looked at the entire tree and they're all the same. So I don't know, maybe they forgot. They put a tree out. But they were identical trees. And then the third listing on there, the person has actually attached records and sources. So they have a very good source tree. And I looked at that, and I was very pleased with the information that I found. And some of the records they had attached were the things we looked at on the screen before. The obituary collection and the obituary times collection. But I chose to look at the person who didn't have any sourced records, because to me that said, maybe their tree contains lots of living people. So they can't attach all these sourced records to living people. So maybe the reason it's not sourced is the people in the tree are living. So the arrow down below points out Robert Lee Ivy, one of these descendants I'm trying to find, says that his spouse is living. Well, I know that. I found that from the obituary. Also says that he has 2 living daughters and a living son. That goes along with the obituary. And then there's a sister that's listed as deceased, and then other siblings that are all showing up as living in this tree. Well, I could contact, through an internal message with Ancestry, that person who submitted the tree. They know who the names of all these people are because they've made them private. So I could contact that person right now, and I could know who all these other people are, not just the people that were listed in the obituary. So I took it a step further and thought, I want to see what MyHeritage has. And I went to MyHeritage, and they have access to the U.S. Public Records database. And so I just plugged his name in, and up comes his birthday, possible relatives, his wife and his children, his address, postal box, mailing address, and possible phone numbers. So I went into the index, and this is what I found. His birth, his wife's birth, this is not in the obituary, his daughter's name, son, some of their birth dates, and then some variations of the same names of the same people. And then you can see that you could scroll through all the different residences and the time frames, and they're really kind of the same place. They just changed the mailing addresses and the postal boxes. And then I looked at the phone numbers, and did the phone numbers change much? And so I know this data is from 1970 to 2010. That's what the index covers. And I could look at the last phone number on there from 2008. Okay, 6 years ago. There's a possibility they could be at the same telephone number. The number above that is similar, up a couple years, 2002. There's similar telephone numbers. I know in the state of Utah, the prefixes, area codes changed. So, well, since 2000, they've had the same phone number at least through 2010 when the index ran. I could just call this lady and see. And so at this point, I know a lot of information, particularly about this one descendant. I know birth dates, I know potential phone numbers, I know addresses. And I know that he had brothers and sisters. I know there's children listed, and I know there's a wife listed. And so who do you think I should try to reach out to first? Of all these people? Anyone? Yes. The wife. Why?
She knows most of the information.
Yeah, she should know where her children are. She should know where the grandchildren are. Particularly with all those fun nicknames that they all have. I'm sure she knows where they are. She should be able to tell me all of that information. If let's say she was deceased, I could contact a child. I could look for information on a child or a sibling. I tested all of the people that were listed in the obituary. And this next process that I show you, I just did for this presentation for the wife, but I did it for all of the living people in the obituary and was able to find contact information for all of them. So in my syllabus, I have about 24 different public directory listings that are available online. Some of them are platforms that run off of the same search engine. So whitepages.com, a lot of people might know it as 411.com, dexknows.com. A lot of regional and local platforms all run off the same search engine. So I just chose White Pages, and I typed in her information. I knew she was in Duchesne, and I got her telephone number, which matched the public records number that I already had, and I got an address that matched those same records. So I could just call her again and ask her some information. Remember, I want them to go on Facebook and join this group so they can all be in one spot, and I can just keep sending one message about a reunion and not hundreds of emails and thousands of letters in the mail. I want them to go to one place. So I could call her and tell her, I don't know if you're into Facebook, lady, but you could go there. I could. I haven't called her. We'll talk about why in just a minute. But I could call her. So then I went to look at another one of the available directories. I went to advanced background checks. And I entered in her information again, Linda Ivy in Duchesne, Utah. And it says there's 2 people listed there. And one's just a variation of her address. So one is like a postal box, and the other's like a delivery address. And this says her current telephone number has the wrong area code. And I know that just because I live in the area and know the area code changed. But it's the same phone number that she's had since 2000 according to the Public Records Index. You should go to that MyHeritage and type your name in. You'll be amazed at what it knows about you. Was very impressed about that. And if you're married, type your maiden name in. It remembers everywhere you lived. So if you forgot where you lived in your old address, you could build your own personal history from going to it. So advanced background checks has, like some of these other directories, they have a free version and a paid for version. So a lot of them on my syllabus have a little $sign by it. Those I know you're gonna have to pay to get anything out of them. Some of them will give you basic information, and then if you want more, you have to pay for it. And one of those sites is peoplefinders.com. And it tells me her name and what she's also known as, the locations that they have her listed, and possible relatives. And those relatives match information that I know is in the family tree and information that I know is in the obituary. But I could pay some money and get her full name, her current address, her phone number, prior residences, all of her relatives, the aliases that she's gone by, her age and date of birth. And it would cost me 95 cents. So if I really can't find her any other way, is it worth it to me to pay $1 and get this information? Or I could just, and that gives me a trial period. Or I could pay $1.95 and get a report. Or I could pay anywhere from $24.95 to $29.95 and have access to a monthly service and then sit down and search all of my people all at one time and know everything about them. And that's the limited report. Well, I could get a background report on her as well. I could find out who her neighbors are, her property records, bankruptcies, judgments and liens, marriages and divorce, birth and death, misdemeanors, criminal background, sex offender records. Okay, now I don't want some of that, but I do maybe want to, hey, I don't want some of it. But I want to know maybe about birth and death and marriage and divorce records if I'm trying to find some people. So, same thing. I could pay, it's $29.95 a month, and I have access to search for anybody. You should go to this place too and pay a couple dollars, and see the information you can find about yourself. So does this scare any of you? Tell me why it scares you. Privacy.
The trial, it's hard to get out of the trial, and the data's old.
Oh, to get out of the trial? Yes.
It automatically just keeps you on your credit card.
Right. This particular, yeah. Some of the peoplefinders.com, if you're going to do it, just plan on paying $30 the rest of your life. Until they've got you got them in there. And so what you do is you pay for it, and then you just get all your neighbors and come share your account, right? They're not going to like us to tell them that, but. Yeah, it can be hard to get out of some of these paid services and the subscriptions. And on the about 24 listings that I have, a lot of them are paid ones. But tell me why it scares you. Privacy. What other reason? Yes?
Most of your internet passwords ask the questions that can be answered by doing this research.
Okay.
So like, if someone wanted to get access to your bank accounts and stuff, didn't know your password, they could go in, say they forgot the password, answer the questions correctly, and they would allow that stranger to set a new password.
Sometimes, a lot of those companies and stuff are now sending a new password to the email account associated with it. Yeah, mother's maiden name. So why are you afraid of that? Yes?
I make up something, like, for instance, refused.
Okay.
You know, just as long as you remember it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So privacy. Yes? I'm sorry, are you? Identity theft. Okay? Yes. Stalkers. I already told you that's what I kind of did 20 years ago, is build this collection of cousins I could stalk. But I, later had a purpose. I had another hand. Anyone else? So all of this information that you can get in a background report is public information. It's not protected information. You might think that's private information about you. It's public information that's in bankruptcy information is public information from a court. All this information is public. I know it's scary, but I'm trying to find living people, and I know who their maiden names are. I already know who they married. I know all of that. I already know them. I know just from that obituary that lady's maiden name. So we need to, some of these entities are starting to change the way they use security to gain access to prevent identity theft. But if we want to collaborate with each other, sometimes this is the best way to find them. And it's not that expensive, and the information is really not private. The information that's here is really not private. Okay. I wanted to go on to Facebook. So I decided, I knew her maiden name because the obituary told me her maiden name. And so I just went in and typed her name in. And I already knew she wasn't my friend on Facebook, or I would have already added her to the group when I started. And so I could go in here and message her. And because we're not friends, if I want that message to go in her inbox, I have to pay $1 to Facebook. Other than that, it goes in her other box. And if she doesn't check her other box regularly, she'll never know I messaged her. But if you see down below where it says I want to add her as a friend, it says we have 3 mutual friends. So I could go to one of these mutual friends and send him a message and say, could you please tell Linda to go to this link on Facebook to join this family group? So I don't have to call her. I don't have to spend any money on anything. I could just go to Facebook, type in her name. I did this for the names of all of the people in the obituary, and the majority of them are in here. And the obituary that said Shane and Liz, that's exactly how they have their name on Facebook. Shane with Liz in parentheses. Exactly. And I could go in and contact them. And on almost every single one of them, I already have a mutual friend. Some of them are family members, and others are just, I wonder how they know that person. But I could just send them a message and say, please send them to this link. It's about a family reunion, and I want them to join it. Facebook is a great tool for family history, not just for creating those groups that we talked about earlier, but for finding people. And a lot of people are going on Facebook, older generation, so they can connect with their grandchildren. So they're already there, and you can get them to come and join that group. Do you guys have any other questions? I know we kind of had a conversation discussion. Any other questions you want to ask? Nothing? Oh, yes.
So how far back can you get these obituaries? I'm looking for a guy who died in 1892.
1892. Okay. So there are a lot of obituaries that are starting to be indexed, but a lot of them are locked on microfilm, and they're in regional libraries for where the death occurred. So I have a sister who is working on my great-grandfather's children, so my grandfather's siblings, and trying to find as much as she can down to the living generation. And she found in the town where a lot of them seem to have died, and she was able to find some death dates but not obituaries. She found a library and contacted them, and they happen to have the only microfilm copy of the local newspaper. It's not gone anywhere else. No one else has it in any repository. So she emailed this gentleman after he confirmed that, because in his email he said, I'll look up stuff for you, and if I find it, I'll charge you $5 to scan it and digitize it and send it to you. And she has emailed him dozens of names. And it's like 60-80% of the people that she asks for, he finds an obituary for and sends it back. So that takes her to the next generation, fills in that. And those people are also, that were listed as living in that obituary, are already deceased as well. And so we just grab that person, we do research and try to figure out where they died. We go to that area until we can find one that's online. But we've been doing it. Yes?
If the information on something like People Finders is public information, how do they get away with charging for it?
Because they've paid for access to the database that it's in.
Can you repeat the question?
So she asked if the information that's on People Finders and other sources like that is public, how can they get away with charging for it? And it's in databases that are not necessarily readily available to everyone. So like the bankruptcy databases that are available in the courts, they've paid to have access to that. So similar to a lot of the records that Ancestry and others are going out and securing, they're paying for access to those records to digitize them and index them. It's the same type of thing. Yes?
Is your Facebook page open or closed?
My Facebook page for that particular ancestor is open because I want people to just be able to type in that ancestor's name and add themselves to the page. I moderate it. Any actual member could moderate and add someone in. I have one of my other groups that's open as well, and I got someone that wanted to join, and I have no clue how they're connected. And all of the descendants are white. This man is not. And he's from another country far, far away. And I very much doubt he's really a descendant of this person. But he could be. He really could be. And so I messaged him and said, could you please tell me how you're connected to this family? Never heard back. I just denied his request because I don't necessarily want him to come in there and see all of our conversation. Some of my smaller family groups are closed once we get everybody on. We know all the living descendants are there. All the first cousins are there. All the younger kids that have Facebook are there. We close it, and you can ask to join. Because we have a lot more current intimate conversations there. We don't want the whole world necessarily to see. Yes?
It sounds like you've had very few negative reactions about, why you bothering with this. What, do you have some stories about some that were unpleasant?
People that were bothered by me finding them? I don't think I've had anyone bothered by me finding them. In 2003, I did a reunion for my third great-grandfather and had struggled to find any living descendants on one of his children. And she'd been older when she married. I knew she'd had some children. I knew their names, but then kind of dead-ended everywhere. Couldn't find anything. Didn't know if that next generation had children. Kind of just assumed there were no children. And actually made a website to go along with the Facebook page, trying to see, if this is who this is, please find us. We're having this reunion. Right before the reunion, we got an email from a lady who said, I am a descendant of this lady. And I think, are you sure? Because I don't know if there really are any. And she said, my mother and her brother and sister all just found each other. They were all put up for adoption when they were little kids. They just found each other, and we've been looking for our heritage, and we found you. And that made it all worth it. And then, and when you ask me that, I don't even remember if there were any negatives, because those kinds of things that are so positive erase if there's any negatives. And I really want people to know about the reunion and have a choice if they want to come. I don't want them to learn about it after the fact, and have them be mad that they didn't know and they had the collection of everything we were looking for. I want them to be able to come. Any other questions? Okay. So she asked a question, how often do we have the reunions? The one that I'm doing for my fourth great-grandfather, this is the first time we have ever had a reunion for him. Originally, I wanted to have it this summer, but it is very complicated to track down all these people. And I have some other cousins who think we should just have it this summer. It's very simple. We could have a potluck lunch in the parking lot. And I said, no, we are going to have to rent this big, huge, large facility. There's thousands of people that are probably going to come. And there's a lot of things we need to plan for this particular one. So we bumped it a year. And because we want other people to help plan if they so desire to help plan. My third great-grandfather, we did reunions every 2 years, and we moved him around the country to places he had lived in. And then we kind of went on a little hiatus for a while. A few of the family members have said, when are we going to do that again? I'm the only one that can plan the reunion. And then my brother's the only one who can manage the website, and I said, you know what, we're doing the next generation up, which you're all a part of anyway, and they're so excited about that. And they're sharing the information about that. Any other questions? Are they helping? I have some people who have already said they're helping. Right now, I've just concentrated on this. So as soon as this is all done, we'll get them going on that. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for coming.